This is case number IT 0484R77.1, the prosecutor versus Shefqet Kabashi.
Thank you, Madam Registrar. Could I have the appearances from the parties? Prosecution first.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Mathias Markussen, and I am appearing today with Ms. Plea and Mr. Colin Navrot as our case manager.
Thank you, Mr. Markussen, for the defense.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. President. Michael Carnavas on behalf of Mr. Kabashi, and good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom.
Thank you, Mr. Carnavas. Mr. Kabashi, could I first check that you're able to follow the proceedings in the language you understand?
Yes.
If at
Optuženi, da. Predsjedavajući sudija, ako u bilo kom trenutku
there is apparently a problem because I do not have English on.
je problem jer ja nemam engleski na kanalu.
Can you hear us, Your Honor?
I can hear you, but I receive translation in another language on Channel 4 as well. And from the body language of other participants in these proceedings, it seems to be the same. Yes. Let's check again. Mr. Kabashi, if at any time you're not receiving interpretation, or if it is difficult for you to hear the interpretation, don't hesitate to let me know without delay.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I would like to invite you to state your full name for the record.
Shefqet Kabashi. Shefqet Kabashi.
And what is the date and place of birth?
The 1st of July 1976, Zahaj, Pay, Kosovo.
Thank you, Mr. Kabashi. Mr. Kabashi, have the authorities of the country of which you are a national, have they been informed about your transfer to and your detention now in the United Nations Detention Unit of the Tribunal in The Hague?
I did not understand. What do you mean?
The authorities of the country of which you are a national, to your knowledge, have they been informed about your present situation that is being detained at the United Nations Detention Unit?
I don't know.
Then
I have no knowledge of it.
Then I'll ask the registry to assist you in establishing communication if you wish to do so, and at least to inform the authorities of the country of which you are a national about your present situation. Further, did you have an opportunity to inform your family about your arrest and about your present detention?
Yes.
Mr. Kabashi, this initial appearance today is governed by Rule 62 of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence, and the purpose of it is to inform you of the charges against you and to ask you to enter a plea, and also to verify that your right to counsel is respected. Now, before I'll set out the allegations that were brought against you, I inform you already now that you have a fundamental right to remain silent in these proceedings. Further, Articles 20 and 21 of the Tribunal Statute address the commencement and the conduct of trial proceedings and the rights you have as an accused in those proceedings. Your counsel will further advise you on these rights and procedures if you need any further information. Mr. Carnavas, have you discussed this matter already with Mr. Kabashi?
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, we've met extensively. He was fully informed before leaving the United States that upon arrival he would be arrested and that he would be brought before a Dutch court, and thereafter he would be brought to the UNDU. He was also advised of today's procedure, and I can speak for him that he will remain silent. We will not enter a plea today. As I understand it, we have some time before that, and he is scheduled to testify in another matter, and I was going to be making a request concerning that the testimony take place on Monday as opposed to today, because he's been bounced around from one place to another without having access to his lawyer.
Yes. Thank you for that information. The operative indictment against you, Mr. Kabashi, is dated the 18th of February 2008. You were arrested this week, on Wednesday, the 17th of August 2011. You were arrested in the Netherlands, and you were subsequently transferred to the tribunal on the 18th of August. That was yesterday. Mr. Kabashi, have you received a copy of the indictment in your own language?
I don't know, maybe I have. I have been given something by my counsel today, but I haven't had the time to look into it.
Then perhaps under those circumstances it would be best that the I was informed, Mr. Kabashi, that when you met with the registrar yesterday that a copy of the indictment in your own language was handed out to you. Does this refresh in any way your memory, and have you read the document that was, which is reported to me as having been handed out to you yesterday? That the indictment, just to say briefly, describes the events and what you're charged with, that is that you contumaciously failed to answer questions that were put to you as a witness.
I did receive some papers yesterday. I did not have the time to look into them. Your registrars were not able to speak English well enough, or any other language that I'd understand. As a matter of fact, I was not capable of having a proper conversation with them. They said they were from the registry, and I was still handcuffed at the time when they were having this conversation with me, so I did not deem it to be significant enough.
Under those circumstances, but I perhaps first ask you whether you have discussed with counsel the charges that were brought against you, irrespective of whether you've read the document or not. Have you discussed with Mr. Carnavas what the charges against you are?
Yes, we have.
Now, Mr. Kabashi, we have two options. We can read the indictment in its entirety to you, and you have a right to have it read to you. Do you want the indictment to be read out, or would you be satisfied if I just very summarily inform you about what the charges are?
You may give me a summary, largely because, given that this document is in my detention room, I will be able to read it later.
Yes, and you have discussed the charges with Mr. Kanavas?
Yes, we have discussed them, and I think we will have plenty of opportunities to do so again.
Yes. Mr. Kanavas, under those circumstances, I would suggest that I very briefly summarize the charges brought against Mr. Kabashi. Also, not only for Mr. Kabashi, but also to the benefit of the public. Mr. Kabashi, you're charged with 2 counts of contempt of the tribunal under Rule 77 of the rules, because you have, and that's the charge, have contumaciously refused or failed to answer questions as a witness in the case of the prosecutor versus Haradinaj et al. And this would have happened in June 2007, when you were present before this tribunal here in The Hague. And the second count is similar refusal or failure to answer questions as a witness in that same case in November 2007. In November 2007, you appeared through video link before this tribunal, where you were physically in another country. These are the charges that were brought against you. Mr. Kanavas, would you like me to go into any further detail, or would this be a sufficient summary?
That would be sufficient, Your Honor.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Kanavas. Mr. Kabashi, pursuant to Rules 77E and 62A, small III of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence, you will be called upon to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty on each of these 2 counts in the indictment within 10 days of this initial appearance. Although you may express a wish to enter a plea today, I understand from the words Mr. Kanavas spoke that you prefer to enter a plea later and not today. Is that well understood?
Yes.
Then as I said before, you'll be called upon to enter a plea within 10 days of this initial appearance, and Mr. Kanavas, that will most likely be on the 26th of August, which is next week, Friday, so in a week from now. And the time as provisionally scheduled is 12 o'clock, therefore at noon. Does that cause you any problem?
That'll be fine.
That will be fine.
That'll be fine.
Thank you. Mr. Kabashi, meanwhile, you will remain in custody at the United Nations Detention Unit, and Mr. Kanavas can inform you give you any information about the rules governing your detention. Then I would like to briefly address the prosecution. I'd like to remind you, Mr. Markinson, that the pursuant to Rules 77E and 66A, small I, of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence, that within 10 days of the initial appearance, so that's today, the initial appearance of the accused, that you shall make available to the defense in a language which the accused understands all the supporting material which accompanied the indictment when the confirmation was sought. I would even suggest that if the material is ready, that you disclose this material already today, so as to better enable Mr. Carnevas and Mr. Kabashi to prepare for next week.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe that shouldn't pose any problem.
Okay. Then, addressing the defense, Mr. Carnevas, perhaps unnecessary, but I'd like to remind you that pursuant to Rules 77E and 72A of the Rules of Procedure and Evidence, that you'll have a 10-day period for filing any preliminary motions once you have received all the supporting material, therefore likely on from today. These preliminary motions include motions which challenge the jurisdiction of the tribunal or allege defects in the form of the indictment. Mr. Kabashi, you're advised to consult on these matters with Mr. Carnevas. Mr. Carnevas, could you give us already any idea on whether there's any developed thought on filing such preliminary motions?
Your Honor, I don't believe that there will be any extensive filing, if any filing at all, concerning these matters. Obviously, we're here, we recognize the jurisdiction of the tribunal, we understand what the charges are. I've seen and looked at the indictment, so I'm satisfied that...
Yes, you say as matters stand now, you have not developed any plans to file such a preliminary motion, although you still have time to consider it further if you wish, of course.
Right.
Well, I think we've dealt with most, if not all, of the issues apart from one, Mr. Carnevas, but before I give you an opportunity to raise it, I would first like to ask the prosecution whether there's any matter they would like to raise at this moment.
No, Your Honor, there's not. Thank you.
Yes. And before I give you an opportunity, Mr. Carnevas, I'd first like to ask Mr. Kabashi whether he himself wants to raise any matter apart from the matter you indicated you would raise in a minute.
No.
Then, Mr. Carnevas, you already told me that you'd like to raise the scheduling of the appearance of Mr. Kabashi as a witness in another case. I will give you an opportunity to further raise this matter, but the first thing that came to my mind is whether I have any competence to decide on timing of appearance as a witness in a case in which I'm not involved.
You have no competence, but nonetheless, I would like the record to be made, because at some point, when this hearing finishes, I will be meeting with the prosecution, and hopefully we will, I've also informed, I should say, the defense yesterday that it would be my wish for Mr. Kabashi to testify on Monday, and that I was going to make the prosecution be aware of that. And of course, we need now bring that to the attention of the trial chamber so that they'll be aware. But just simply for the record, when Mr. Kabashi came knowing that he would be arrested. And I had been in touch with the Dutch authorities prior to that, a Dutch prosecutor who was extremely cooperative and seemed to know exactly what the procedure was. Our expectation was that he would leave from the airport and go immediately to a Dutch court, and thereafter he would immediately go to the UNDU. That did not occur because apparently an investigative judge thought research needed to be done. And in fact, even yesterday, when we had this unexpected hearing, because we weren't supposed to even appear before court until this morning in the Dutch court, there was some indication that he could be let out on custody by the Dutch. So in any event, then I was told he was coming here yesterday immediately to the tribunal, I assume for his initial appearance. I rushed over here, found out that he went to the UNDU. And then my appointment wasn't arranged until later, and then we had the scheduling order. Be that as it may, I have not had any contact, any real contact with Mr. Kabashi, other than seeing him a little bit at the police headquarters in order to go over the material. Therefore, and that's why I want the record to be very clear that while we appear before this tribunal at the earliest possible moment, I have not had access to Mr. Kabashi to prepare him, and I think it would be fundamentally unfair for him to go in court this afternoon to give evidence, considering that depending on his performance in that proceeding, it may impact the situation before us, before this particular proceeding. So given that, I would like my client to be in the best frame of mind, be prepared, and of course, hopefully get everything resolved within an expeditious manner.
Yes. Mr. Canavas, of course, I fully understand all your considerations. As you agreed with me in the beginning, I have no competence whatsoever to deal with the matter. The only thing I could do is to ask the registry to make a copy of the transcript of what you just said. And of course, that is not a way of introducing a matter before another chamber, but it may at least assist you in presenting those matters before that other chamber, whether or not after having discussed the matter with the prosecution and defense in that other case. I refrain from that, but Madam Registrar, if it would be possible to have a printed copy of what Mr. Carnavas just said to be given to your colleagues who serves as a representative of the registry in that other case, and then I'm not competent to say to whose attention she or he should bring it, but and if it's you, then hand it out to yourself and see what to do with it as you deem fit. We briefly move into private session.
May I be seated, Your Honor? May I be seated?
Yes.
Session.
Thank you, Madam Registrar. Mr. Carnavas, is there any other matter you would like to raise?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Then, Mr. Kabashi, one final question for you. Are there any issues in relation to your arrest and detention or in relation to your health that you would like to raise at this moment?
Maybe I will speak next time.
Yes, I do understand that there's no matter which you consider so urgent as to raise it at this moment. Then this concludes this initial appearance. Then the proceedings are adjourned until the 26th of August 2011 at 12 o'clock in courtroom 1 will resume on that date and at that time. We stand adjourned.
All rise. Veuillez vous lever.